Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing Live Show number 313. I hope it's not an unlucky number. We are coming up. I think next week is mathematically, this is where I need Robert. I think mathematically next week is our anniversary show. But I actually have to go look. But yeah.
And Friday the 13th.
Oh, yay. That's perfect. That is a wow. And I just have to wait for a meteor shower and maybe Jupiter to fly past Saturn. And I'll be a go. This will work out exceptionally well for all of us. So for first off, thank you. With me with is Miss Tammie Carlisle with StOnge Internet and Mr. Dean Schmit with Basecamp Meta. I think Mr. Tim Peters is in the wings, but we'll wait for him to pop up and show his pretty face soon enough. Given that we are just now into August, which is still a little mind-numbing for me because I'm not. Oh, there he is. Look at that handsome devil.
Where?
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, never mind. Yeah. Mr. Tim Peter and Associates. I was just kicking off early dialogue. I had thrown out the general topic that as I talk with clients, they're getting growing concerns. One, here in Florida, there are cancellations growing as people, because Florida, of course. Sorry about that, Tim. You're moving to the state, and here we are showing you a little bit of our truisms.
Fully vaxxed, baby. Fully vaxxed.
Yeah, well. From that, I mentioned the fact that NAFTA, the National Association for Restaurant Equipment, it's a huge, I can't remember the whole acronym, but it was based in Orlando. It was going to Orlando. They canceled 20 days out, and it is a massive, massive conference that got stopped. I do know that AHOA might be getting some social resistance, is kind of, I guess, a way of saying it, of people's perception of them running such a large conference as this begins to change in spectrum for people. And I don't think. I mean, that's just unfortunately bad timing of it. But no, so I'm not. And I'm not.
I mean, that was scheduled, planned, and kicked off during the before times. I mean,
yeah, in that sense, yeah. So
before times take two, right?
Yeah, so. and so forth. So when my pretest to some of the dialogue, which obviously we can stray off the beaten path very quickly or even hit it at all, is: are we coming to a larger cliff than we anticipated? Because we all thought that there was a potential that this summer surge, pent-up travel demand requirements and so forth, and this huge demand to most markets was going to begin to have some tapering off at some point. But now is at a larger precipice than we originally thought, and so forth. And I know, Tim, you don't forecast stuff, so we'll just do prognostication.
No, it's not that I don't forecast. It's that I think you have to plan for a couple different eventualities. And I think particularly now, this highlights why you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
The thing about the new normal is that it won't be normal. It's that it will vary by market. It will vary by season. It will vary by the news day to day based on what's going on in your market and in your feeder markets and things along those lines. And I think you have to be prepared for greater flexibility. You have to plan. You have to come up with plans that say, okay, what are we going to do if we are up 20%? What are we going to do if we're down 20%, right? And thinking through how you would approach those differently and be prepared to act. It doesn't mean that you're going to get it exactly right. There's the old Dwight Eisenhower quote that plans are useless. Planning is essential, right? You have to have taken the action of thinking this through and say, what is a great case scenario? What's a terrible case scenario? What is the likely scenario? What are maybe you even have to come up with a couple between those and be prepared to act based on how the facts change, day by day, week by week.
I say, Tim, what do you do when you're up 20% at the start of the day and down 20% at a end of the day, right? I mean,
adapt quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of things is that I just had a fresh conversation with a client, and Dean, this kind of goes into your lane a little bit about metasearch. I had always expressed the value of metasearch. It's amazing what they remember and what they forget. First off, it's like, really, that's what you got out of the conversation. That one thing. Everything else you didn't catch, but that one thing just stuck in there. And the way that they were moving forward with the metasearch perspective was that it was great for the demand type that we're facing. Short window rates and dates. They were looking for what they wanted to buy. It wasn't so much that they already hadn't done the research or made the decision of where their destination was going. They were looking for what was available at what availability and price in that market. And metasearch was having a surge of value and so forth. And So now in the dialogue of me opening the can of worms with them, going, so what are, to Tim's point, our plans for this mercurial ups and downs that you're facing? They had some hotels in their portfolio that were very high yield in ADR, and their occupancies were mitigated by that. Then they had others that were a free-for-all. Whatever they could sell was how they sold, and their occupancy was their driver, and so forth. And MetaSearch had a mix for both of those. Now they want to be very conservative in their MetaSearch program because they feel like that might be something that has to get shut off right away. So they're like, as long as you're going to babysit it. And I'm like, well, first off, don't shut off. But by the same token, if we have nothing to sell, if they get shut down, which is incredibly unlikely given the current scenarios, but if there is no demand to your market, that's another conversation. But it's that I feel like when I talk to the operational people, that they feel like they got the ox yoke on them. We don't care. Just keep doing as much we can with what we have and rate as much as you can and get as much revenue as you can while there's their demand.
While you can, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the corporate perspective of, well, what are our contingency variations? What are our other things we should do? How should we structure our process given what you mentioned, the mercurial ups and the mercurial downs? And you can't satisfy both. An operation really feels at hostage. I got to say that they're taxed and burdened with facilitating stuff. They're running hourly shifts on top of their corporate shifts, or their salary shifts, and they just almost in a way want to feel relieved that the demand does taper off a little bit, so they don't have to be doing all the stuff that they're doing right now because they're not finding the resources or getting the resources that they need to basically get those warm bodies into positions to not do hourly work. So it's these things. I think about things like the HSMAI and the High Tech Conference. How is this going to happen? Is it going to affect it at all? If people are going to be held to high water, I don't care, I'm going to go, which I'm sure there'll be some if it keeps going. And then there's going to be some that might recoil back and say, I'm not too certain about this, and maybe not, because Dallas just went to red. They just notified that they're on their highest level of concern for COVID. And Texas and Florida have been clearly singled out for their governorships as to how they're handling their COVID responses. And I'm only referencing that because literally it's happening in Dallas. So, it's not as if I'm trying to be political about it. It's just literally happening in a state that this is a highlight of focus right now, that Florida is a hot spot, Texas is a hot spot. How's that going to affect demand cycles? So,
well, and if there is a silver lining, and I'm stretching here a bit, not to misunderstand, but if you look up and you Google COVID stats and look at the line graphs with us, actually, I've got an image. Is there a way to share an image on here?
Yes. Up in the upper left-hand corner, just hit the little plus.
There we go.
It's share video or share screen, whatever.
Yeah, I'll share screen here.
It's show and tell time.
Show and tell, yay. So, again, take this with an extreme grain of salt here, but this is a comparison according to the New York Times. You can Google this, COVID-19 stats, and it shows the trends for what we see for new cases in the United States. We see the spike back in January, and if we look at our new cases here in July, exceeding where we were last year at this time. However, if we go over here and look at the number of deaths, far below. So vaccination, right? Vaccination means that if you do get it, it doesn't kick your tail quite as bad as it used to.
If you're vaccinated.
We're getting better at treating it than we were before as well. So I think that's a positive sign. I'm trying to put a silver lining on it a little bit, but
yeah, I think the challenge too, though, right now is you've got a lot of people that are still hesitant to travel, right? Even those of us, I know, Tim, you said fully vaccinated, and disclosure, I'm fully vaccinated too. Shoot, the day California said, it was like, okay, get my appointment. And my daughter's fully vaccinated as well. She's a teenager, as well as my husband. So, but I think you have some people that are nervous. You have some people, quite honestly, my biggest fear is what happens when these variants mutate to a point where the vaccine's not, right? So there's that hesitancy there. And I'm torn, right? Because yeah.
We're getting hacked. It's like the Zoom account thing where people were going in and hacking. We got a hacker.
Speaking about mutated variants, Hi, everybody.
Are you Loki?
I am.
You're Loki.
Oh God, we could devolve into the Marvel universe.
Oh, that'd be a more fun
I
conversation.
hate the
I
Marvel
know.
universe. Oh.
Oh, I'm so sorry for you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Ed, your head's in the way of that poster behind you.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I was going to go off
Continue.
into total side
Oh,
tangent,
please, Tammie,
but
continue.
I think so. You know, to the point of planning, right, day by day, and we just don't know what's going to happen. I also, you know, Lawrence, you're talking about the marketing strategy conference, right, as part of HSMAI, and I can't speak to high tech, but I'm on the committee, right, for that conference. So we're all kind of in this, like, would this darn variant go away? And would COVID go? I mean, it is kind of a wait and see game, I think, at this point. And I have no inside knowledge into what high tech or HSMI is going to do, and if they end up canceling anything, but. And I, in a lot of ways, I hope not, right? I hope we're able to put on a safe conference with enough protocols in place to keep people going. I haven't seen it yet because I don't pay attention to things. But I've heard I'll be at the Hotel Data Conference next week, and I've heard that masks are going to be in effect. Again, I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard from a couple people now that have told me that. So we shall see. And I was at Alice last week, and first work conference in almost 18 months. And I got to tell you, just getting out and seeing people, even though we were in LA, so there was a mask mandate indoors, that for the most part until the last day, people followed pretty well. I noticed there were a lot more like non-followers on the Wednesday, but you could still social distance and keep safe. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks. I mean, even just Alice day one and I don't want to say optimism, but well, we're going to see what happens in September, but it seemed to be a bit more optimistic. And by Wednesday, it was maybe not, pessimistic, but like you can see over the last week or two, right, that with the news and with what's going on, that it feel like things have gotten a bit more pessimistic. So it'll be interesting. But to Tim's point, you don't know. And tomorrow they could come up with a cure that, you'll never get it again. Okay, I'm dreaming. But you just never know. And so we just have to keep planning for, kind of plan for the worst, hope for the best, but always have a plan and know that you'll never follow it 100%. But it's the planning process itself that helps you be prepared.
Yeah. Well, we keep on looking for this business traveler to pick up and fill in some of these gaps, right, where the leisure traveler drops off. And these conferences we're talking about are travel industry conferences, but they're a key example of that, right? If our business isn't traveling, who is? It's I was talking with some people from Hedna yesterday. Hedna Miami's in October, and they're already talking about how do we do a hybrid session where some things might be online, some things might be live in the direct. So, gosh, I know. I hate to see it, but I also understand why.
Well, and I mean, I have very strong opinions about this, and I want to start. Yeah, I know, but I want to start with what Tammie said. Of don't predict, plan. Right? Don't predict, plan. We just lived through this once, so whatever we're going to face, the worst of whatever we're going to face shouldn't come as a surprise. You paid tuition over the last year. It is time to put that education to work. Don't slash your marketing. Target it. Pay really close attention to your feeder markets, whether they're drive or fly, which probably isn't going to be what it's going to be, but pay close attention to how your guests are getting there. I've been talking for a long time now about this idea of backyard and bundle. Focus on local travelers, focus on people close in, focus on the second wallet. How do you get people in market to spend more on the stay so that even if your occupancies aren't what you're looking to be, your revenues can be? And think about your plans. I'm looking right now, I've got the TSA site up right now, and I look at this about once a week. Traveler throughput for 2021 has still not been, we've not equaled a 2019 day once, as good as things have gotten. it doesn't look like business travel's coming back in the way we want anytime soon. And that's before we had Delta and all this kind of stuff. So plan. How do you deal with that? If you think something could happen, if you think it's possible something could happen, and you don't apply the learnings we've just had over the last year, you're really not doing what you need to do as a professional marketer.
And so let me add on to that, because you made this comment of don't slash your marketing. For all of those hotels that are currently sold out and have been for some time, and you have pulled back on your marketing, turn it back on.
End of show.
There it is. Mic drop. We're done. Okay, thank you all for joining.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to say I'm working with a couple of properties who who I was advising all through the pandemic, and we kept marketing on the entire time. We were very targeted about it. We were really smart about it, but we kept it on the entire time. And in those properties, they are not just full. They are over-indexing on rate as well. We didn't discount. We didn't go nuts. We tried to be very strategic and very smart.
Yep.
And we are, we're at 100% occupancy, literally 100% occupancy, at least weekends and, frankly, quite a few weeknights as well. And we are well over-indexing in terms of rate and in terms of in terms of RevPAR, because they kept selling what the product is throughout the thing, so that when things got tough, or as things came back, people were like, I know this place. I've heard of this place. I'm comfortable with this place. They seem to be smart. They seem to know what they're doing and the like. And it has worked out really well for them. In one case, one of the properties I'm working with is literally at 100% of 2019 numbers last week. And a couple of other properties, they're at 40% above 2019 as of right now.
Yep. And we see that across a lot of our partners.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Yep. And it's interesting when you do talk to them, because I don't know if you guys have heard this in those conversations. You hear a lot of survivor's guilt out of those businesses.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Where they really don't want to talk about the fact that, they're at historic levels of the entire time they've existed. And, they feel guilty about it because they know that not everyone's in that same boat. But I will say, don't feel guilty, because a lot of them are in that position because they made good moves throughout the pandemic, and they're reaping the benefits of that. But I will say I've seen a lot in the last 60-ish days. I've seen a lot of hotels going back to standard plan, standard peak season, turn down marketing, ride the wave. That's not what you should be doing right now. You need to be focused on how are you engaging, to know that good times end. Good times end. We saw that March 2020.
March
wasn't even that long ago.
2020. Let's be fair. March 2020, December 2008, September of 2001. This is not our first rodeo. And admittedly, you would think it would take more than one rodeo before you become fairly good at it. But, but we're going on, third or fourth at this point for many folks. There is a playbook you can follow here.
Yep.
The specifics vary a little bit, and they do vary some. But the core of it is, don't cut your marketing, don't cut your rate, cut your rate judiciously to the right customers and things like that, but don't cut your rates across the board.
Yep.
And plan for the things that you think are going to happen.
And by the way, let's take the new lesson we got. If you can avoid it, don't cut your staff.
Correct.
Because that cuts deep on the other end.
That's right.
And, I know quite a few properties who were fortunate enough that their ownership was able to be in a position to not cut their staff during the pandemic. And guess what? Those hotels aren't having staffing issues.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, I recognize that there are hoteliers out there, GMs, owners, and what have you, that when we talk about the survival skills, that went through their entire list of survival skills. They went to plan B, plan C, plan D.
Oh, sure.
They took out a second mortgage. They burned through every safety net that they had just to get here. And the reason they're riding the wave is because they're trying to get their head back above water again and at least take a deep breath.
Yep.
So when you tell that hotelier, hey, I need you to not bask in the glory right now, they're like, oh, come on. You know?
Well, yeah. And the other thing to be fair, Dean, and you raise a great point. I sent out an email to all of my clients right at the start of all this last year, right at the start, late March, early April, after we'd seen a couple of weeks of this. And I said, here is the advice I'm giving you as blanket advice. But rule 0 is don't go out of business. This is my advice. This is what I believe is the correct thing to do. Do what you must to make, to pay your note at the end of the month. Do whatever you got to do. I get that. However, I think if you also do these things, you're going to be in better shape over the longer term. But, this ain't dogma. This is, do what you can and try to do what you can on top of that. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think through some of the conversations I'm having with different clients and so forth, and the perspectives are so across the board. I mean, I don't have hundreds of clients or anything to say, this is a statistical relevance. It's just the dialogue is fascinating. That and I don't mean to be derogatory about it. Until it's a problem, it doesn't get focused. It just seems to be, and this goes back to the marketing amount of money being spent. It was constantly deferred. Like, we don't need marketing, and as much explanations that went on with, you do know you're not selling right now. We're not trying to exacerbate the current issue where you have logistics.
Sorry, what was that word?
Exacerbated. That's my word. It's my word.
What are the roots of those words?
Wait, what's the other one?
Can I get a definition?
What's my other word?
Compound.
Huh?
Just say compound.
No, yeah. But I have another word, which is also my word. So it's the
paradigm,
dude. It's
paradigm.
That's it. That's my other word.
Yes.
Wait, aren't the paradigms the things that the Justice League fought in that really bad movie?
I think so. Yes.
Could be. It could be those dudes with the little extra hands and stuff. I'm not lying. It could be those guys. But between paradigms and exacerbations, that's me.
You were saying, Lauren.
Anywho, with it in mind, with marketing, that they deferred this, thinking that it was going to expand their problems currently. They're now looking at, well, what do we do differently? And then now there's this stutter step of, well, if we don't know how bad it's going to be, or if it's going to be bad at all, or if it's just a variance in demand. And they also go back to we don't know what we don't know, which is, it could be just fine. It could be constant demand, because we can't, they're kind of using the words back and saying, well, you've said that we don't have anything to really truly compare this to in the sense of seasonality or traditional business cycle. So why wouldn't we think that the good times can't keep on going? And so there's these three ways: worse, same, better. Okay. And they're not looking at making any changes to what they're doing right now because they're cashing checks. And
and again, to Tim's point, I get it. But you can do little things. First of all, marketing should always be honest. It's, you adjust what you're talking about to reflect what is going on with the business. So if you're sold out every single weekend and most weekdays for the foreseeing future, you know what you could be talking about right now when you're not sold out.
Next year.
Yes, because here's the thing.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. You need to continue always talking and engaging, because if you don't, it doesn't matter you're sold out right now. To the people you're not talking to, you don't exist.
Right.
That's right. And by the way, too, when's a great time to engage your database? When you don't need anything from them. You could actually improve your relationship with them by not being that crappy friend that only talks to them when you need to borrow their truck to move.
Hey, right? I said I was sorry that I asked about borrowing your truck. I kept telling you. But you kept bragging about your truck, how big and badass it was. I was like, dang, I got to go borrow that thing.
But the difference is you also call Ed just to talk, not just to borrow the truck.
Right.
That's the message.
I would let Lauren borrow my truck whenever he wants.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it.
Because we're friends, because we talk when we don't need anything from each other. And so, this is a great opportunity to have some conversations with your database about, just nice stuff. Like, hey, hope you're having a good day. Here's some interesting stuff going on, but no book now. Like, just so you know, we still exist and we care about you.
I know the field has changed, including their name and so forth. Is there any other entity out there that is trying to survey the lay of the land nowadays as to sentiment of hotels and so forth? Is anybody coming up with any interesting consensus information about just perceptions? Like, okay, I know, was it...
You're saying of consumers or you're saying of the hoteliers? Because the one of the challenges I'm running into, Lauren, is there are, McKinsey does good work in this area. There's a number of good studies out there. The challenge with them is, the last good data that I saw came out about a week ago or thereabouts, and it was put in the field about 3 weeks before that. So what it is talking about, although there's some great stuff in there, it doesn't apply because the news is changing so rapidly, right? That is the biggest challenge from that perspective.
So Longwoods and Miles have done consumer sentiment every 2 weeks for the entire length of this pandemic.
Yeah.
Why I mention that? Well, the news has just turned bad. Well, let's look at the last time the news turned bad. Go look at the consumer sentiment. Right. Go look at what their sentiment was around those markers. And it actually can start giving you a bit of a roadmap if you can't remember your own, or if you didn't do anything the first time around. All right, go look at things like that. But, at the same time, like, don't be lulled into getting caught with your pants down. I mean, because that's what I feel could be coming. And, it's avoidable. It takes a little bit of guts. I understand that. But, the ones who do it, I mean, listen, there were hotels in New York City that held a really good occupancy through the entire pandemic. Do you want to know what their secret was? They were nimble, and they had an attitude of, let's find who needs to be traveling and make sure we're talking to them. And guess what? They didn't get hurt as much. It was only like it was just a bad year in New York for them, not that there was a global pandemic. And they were in one of the areas that was really hard to have survival on. But so many other hotels just went, there's nothing we can do.
And they closed. Yeah, I do think what's interesting about where we are at the moment, and I want to start with, I could be dead wrong about this. This is why I say plan, don't predict, right? But in a lot of ways, what we're seeing right now feels to me, you got to give me a little rope with which to hang myself here before you jump in, but feels to me like a normal recession. And what I mean by that is a normal recession in the hospitality industry doesn't cover the entire country, doesn't cover the entire world. Market A is having a tough time, while market B is having an okay time or a good time, right? We've seen this for a long time. 2015, 2016, thereabouts. Houston was getting hammered, and it was the best year anybody had ever seen for quite a while. You know what I mean? Depending on what market you were in. So if you are in a market that happens to be a hotspot, or if you depend on feeder markets that happen to be hotspots, you're probably going to have a tougher time of it than people who are in a place that is not a hotspot or the right property type, right? Meaning, more outdoor activities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can use the things you develop during those periods to say, what did we do when there was a recession for us, and treat it the same, just like Ed was talking about, as opposed to, oh my gosh, everything's awful, we can't do anything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not a normal recession. The causes are not normal, but the how you react to it are more normal than I think we think they are at this point.
And I do not believe you're going to see as much government influence in this next wave.
Almost certainly not.
Yeah. And so that's actually good news for you as a business owner, because that means there will be places to pick from that you can make transactions happen, because it won't just be this entire part of the United States is just economically closed. And part of why I say that is the loud big governors are all on the ropes. So none of them are going to make moves that could potentially knock them out. So that's California, New York, Florida, and Texas. I don't see any of them making big moves there because they're all on the ropes for completely different reasons.
Right.
That also will have a trickle effect to the follow-on governors that generally follow the lead of one of those 4 governors. They're not going to be able to safely point to, this is what California did, so this is what we're doing, or this is what Florida and Texas did, so this is what we're doing. It's going to be a little different this time. So make sure you have a plan for how to become nimble if you didn't keep that behavior from the previous time, because I really do think this is going to be a different version of the same problem. And I think it's going to have slightly different variables. Some of those variables will work in your benefit. Some of them are going to work against you. You need to be nimble.
You know what, Tim, you just reminded me of something that, thank you. I always love the fact we get the chat like this. Like I said, this is like therapy for me. You gave me a wonderful, wonderful idea. Vanessa with Smith Travel was traveling with us when we were doing the rocket presentations. And she had this amazing graphic that showed in color through the star reporting, the displacement that the hurricane in Houston gave when people had to do something different, whether they were displaced because their house was destroyed or just how business shifted. And she literally showed the color comparisons of how here's the demands and this, and then poof, you just see it move away from the areas like water spreading, You gave me a brilliant idea because you look at your market very myopically, as my terminology filter today. So, hey, is that good, Mike? Okay. So myopically. All right. So you forget that and then you look at certain markets based on just their immediacy around it. But looking at displacement values, because this might be for me, I'm thinking this is a strategy attack of, okay, as these things happen, and you mentioned this before, and everybody's kind of intimidated, he's like, regionally, we're going to see impacts. We're going to see things happen in places because of the concentration that might be provided to begin to see where that goes. Okay, so here's XYZ hotspot. If it was like a natural disaster, which we're having way too many of anyway, what happens to what's there? What happens to the demand that was going there? Where does it go? And it's not so much about transient destination. Oh, I wanted to go to Disney World, but instead I'm going to go to South Florida. It's not that kind of displacement all the time. It's about we can't be here, or there has to be some other reason to go to another place for all the reasons that people have to travel or get displaced. That's an interesting way of looking at like, okay, so do you have that built? Do you have the data resource to know where to look for that says, okay, Detroit, something happened. Where did they go? Did it go to Cleveland? Did it go to Cincinnati? Did it go to New York, Pennsylvania? Where did what was going to Cleveland go, when it came to not being able to be in Cleveland? I thought it was pretty cool. Thank you. I appreciate that idea.
Well, what's the old, I think it's Mark Twain, right? History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
God, Tim, you always have such good quotes.
I'm totally going to use that.
Yeah, but there are less. For heaven's sakes, I said this a minute ago. We just went through this. It's not going to be exactly the same, but it's going to rhyme. There's going to be things we can take from what we just did for the markets that are going to be impacted by this, and there will be. So and the reason you want to do this. So wow, I'm going to take a weird left turn. But I talk a lot about agile in marketing and things like that, and I mean agile with the capital A, like development does, agile development. And the reason that agile development came around was because for a long time there was this idea of waterfall development, where you did these big monolithic projects, right? And I have a particular reason why I believe that big monolithic projects often did not work well. And it comes from the fact that I was trained as a musician. What you learn as a musician is how to rehearse, right? You rehearse and you rehearse and you rehearse and you practice a lot so that you can do it in your sleep, so that the time you go on stage, it's a piece of cake because you've already lived through this, dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of times. And the reason that waterfall projects often failed was because you were doing this big, huge release that you had never done before. You had no rehearsal. You had no practice. One of the reasons Agile works is because you do it every day. You do a 2-week sprint. You do a 1-week sprint, and you're releasing constantly. And that helps you get good at it because you're rehearsing constantly, right? Agile marketing, from my perspective, when we think about Agile, it's about that spirit of rehearsal. We just went through this. Get in the pattern of assuming there's always going to be a bad day. There is always going to be a bad weekend. There is always going to be a bad week. There is always going to be a bad month. This time it's being caused by the pandemic. Last time it was caused by the pandemic. The time after this, it might be caused by your Houston and oil prices tank. It could be that you're in wherever and, the real estate market tanks. It could be because you're in, California, there was an earthquake. It could be because you're in the Gulf Coast. And sorry, Tammie, could be you're in the Gulf Coast and there was a hurricane. Like, this shouldn't come as a surprise. You got to rehearse this stuff. And that's what that's the muscle memory. That's the what rehearsal should have taught us during this last period, to say, okay, we know how to cope with this in a way that it isn't, oh my gosh, run for the bunker, shut everything down and just hope for the best until it passes over. It's not a winning strategy for the long run.
I think we should ostracize Dean because he's the only one on a Windows platform on our call today. Just saying.
You can tell that?
Yes.
Yeah. And Edward's using his VPN out of Indianapolis, but hey,
I just figured it was because that's the Nebraska thing to do.
It might be. It could be. Anyway.
Hey, you know what? I tried a Mac for a year. It literally used a Mac for a year and just hated it, and was all kinds of delighted when I could go back to my PC.
I don't know if in the Sith way of life that we're living, if you don't agree with me on everything, then we agree on nothing. So I don't know. It's
actually fun you bring that up though. That feeling. So I did a webinar with Navis about loyalty, and there was a section where we were where Navis was talking about some research that millennials are less loyal, and I actually said, I was like, no, that's not right. I said, no, I'll give you perfect proof. Apple and Google. Mm-hmm. Apple and Google, those companies have created such loyalty that you don't just prefer them. You are disgusted by the alternative.
I am disgusted by you, Dean. I cannot believe that you
laugh.
I got to put the French accent on because it sounds much more demanding when
that didn't happen accidentally. That there was effort put into eliciting that response, and that is a form of loyalty. But how you get there and how they got there is completely different than the understanding of loyalty programs, right? They didn't get there because they were cheap or because they gave you points or any of that stuff. They got there by earning that position, by treating you the way you want to be treated and giving you experiences that match or exceed the expectations. They got there via nuance, not by blunt object. And look at the rewards that they've reaped from this. Apple people hate the idea of Android. Android people hate the idea of Apple. They made you pick a side that you will not meander lightly into the other side. That is proof positive that loyalty is possible across every generation. It's just how you get there. That's changed.
I'll also add to the loyalty conversation that it's not necessarily a generationally defined thing, because I have my doppelganger, Lauren Gray, on Instagram and all this other stuff. She's got some fierce loyalty of people following her because they are really mad at me for having my name.
Really mad. Say something.
Yeah, and it's not just the young boys that are mad at me. The young girls are like, how dare you have her name, you old dude. And I'm like, hence the issue with the old dude part. I had it before her, sorry. But it is, there is a passion to it. And I think in a strange way, it has come from this polarization of how we have to be committed to what we believe in. It's like, okay, this is what I am and this is what I'm going to fight for. In stalwartness against anybody else's opinion of logic or common sense sometimes. We see that. We see this. You can't make somebody logically consider an alternative to what their belief is sometimes. You just, we've all had those conversations.
Well, that's sort of the definition of belief.
Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, go ahead.
Tammie, you
Oh
started.
no, I was going to devolve into an Apple versus Android conversation that we
Please.
probably don't need to go down.
No,
so.
please
How cool
do.
Apple is and how
Because I actually think
Windows is.
from a marketing perspective, these are things we need to be deconstructing. So in this webinar, I actually pointed out that I believe loyalty programs are what breed laziness, right? Now I have an easy reason to point to you telling me who you are and telling me more about you. And I don't have any interest in doing anything meaningful with that. I mean, and let's look at it. Show me a loyalty program that once you joined it, you actually felt like they were doing anything different with the extra information they know about you. And it's rare. And especially at the scaled loyalty programs, it's non-existent. It's laziness. It's, I don't want to have to think through how to build a really interesting journey with you. Instead, I'm just going to say, sign up here for this and you'll get this.
Right. It's transactional.
Excuse me, one sec.
Go ahead, Tim.
No, please.
Well, I think to your point, I mean, it is transactional. I was about to say, first of all, I'm a member of a lot of different loyalty programs. And the reason I am, or I shift certain ways sometimes, is for those points, or for, I'm a MVP Gold on Alaska because you know what? Pre-pandemic, I think I took 6 flights and I was upgraded on 5 of them, right? And when you're traveling for work all the time, selfishly, I kind of like that seat. So I will skew my travel that way because I know, hey man, but it's a transaction. It's not like I'm getting anything personalized or special or different. The same with, the hotel brand. So what I was going to devolve on the Apple versus Android and I've used both. Admittedly, huge Apple fan and Disney, and Disney, but huge Apple fangirl. I really think Android is very customizable, right? Like you can do more from a customization standpoint with Android than you can with the Apple. Although Apple has really leaps and bounds in the last few years with shortcuts and when they bought workflow and some of those other things, which I absolutely love. Apple just works out of the box, right? So my parents can buy an Apple phone and it just works. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to learn and the structure. And so Android drove me personally crazy partially because I had used Apple for years. So my brain was already wired that way, but it was having to really sit down and think and read and learn how to do things I could do the things I wanted to do. But it was much more customizable. Like it just took longer for me. But there are people that like that want that customization, and so they shift that way. Yeah, you're right.
Well, I actually want not customization. I don't want to have to spend my time figuring out how to do things on my phone. I just want to call people and text people. I mean, in all seriousness, I one of the things I had this argument with a guy I worked with years ago who was a big Android guy, and I shouldn't even say argument. Because this comes back to loyalty, right? Where I'm not trying to make a case for Apple or Android, but he went on this lengthy, passionate diatribe about why Android was better and all the customization and all the different things you could do and how you could make it the device, that was perfect for you and all those other kinds of things. And I was like, sure, I don't want that. I want a phone I can pick up and press the button and do a thing without having to think about what do I have to do that. And neither of those are bad, by the way. That's how you get loyalty, is by being the thing that people can love, right? I have seen people with Harley Davidson tattoos. I've seen people with Apple tattoos. I have seen people with, Fender tattoos, right? I have never seen somebody with a Marriott Bonvoy tattoo.
Yeah.
Because, the last time I knew the numbers, and this is 2016, 2017, so this is a little out of date, and obviously post-pandemic this is going to be different, undoubtedly different. But the last time I knew the number, there were over 1 billion loyalty memberships in the United States of America, right? We averaged about 9 loyalty programs per man, woman, and child in the United States. Now, at that point, that ain't so much loyalty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know, it's about, you know, what drives you to actually. True loyalty is, do we actually care? Do we actually love this thing? Are we actually committed to it? Now, I will admit, I'm probably getting a little older and a little cynical on one element, and I'm old enough to remember the PC versus Mac wars the first time around back in the 90s. And some of me just wonders if, you know, young people are just so angry about it because they have passion. They're not old and burnt out. But I'm kidding. It's mostly a joke. Mostly.
It's,
but it is
yeah, but you're not off. I mean,
but it is this thing of you have to give people something to be passionate about,
right?
And
so talking to that,
do fall down.
Let's talk about that miss, because let's talk about that loyalty that people have for a device. When, okay, that's a necessity purchase type thing nowadays, but for a long time it wasn't. Like, you know, life existed without cell phones and stuff like that. Travel is so much of an emotional transaction. And yet there has not been a travel brand that has elicited the type of response that brands from other verticals have been able to elicit from people.
I would say at scale, Ed. I would.
Yeah,
the only place I would push back
that.
On that is at scale. Right?
So
There
if you could please send in to Lauren pictures of your hospitality specific tattoos. We will feature them on the show.
Black out the parts that we don't want. Black out the parts we don't want. No, you know what? You bring up a couple of interesting. I threw the article up there about the Marriott CEO from, and I hate to go retro to it, but that's Robert's last news list. It was in there on a row. I read it and was like, huh. Because one of my comments about today's conversation about how we're talking about demand and so on is the mediocrity in which Brandon seems to be responding to this in ways. I mean, Bomboy is a great example of what is it really doing for all those that have spent the money for it, and those being the franchisers and so forth, and investors, whatever we want to look at, stockholders, whatever. That what is it providing? And it just, when you get this something from the leader of the ship saying, yeah, you know what, it is owner more focused than it is user, and the Starwood membership going over and saying, our loyalty members going, see, I told you they were going to mess with the Starwood thing and bring it down to the level of what Marriott was, which is what we didn't want about it anyway. It is interesting as we look at these things of how what we want to be passionate about we're not as much as we could be.
SPG, I mean, I would argue SPG people were passionate about. I think some of what you're running into right now is, you know, disgruntled passion, right?
Yes. Yep. Yes. You know, look at it from, you know, you talk about loyalty. Loyalty comes in lots of different flavors. If somebody told me Dean is in jail, which, you know, it may not really be news because probably so my first reaction is, well, that's wrong. Okay, because Dean's a friend. My first reaction would be on the positive of it is a mistake. Now, you'd have that happen to somebody you don't like. You're like, yeah, he got what he deserved. And you're biased in thinking that it may have been just as innocent of a reason for him to be in a bad circumstance, but your initial perception, like if Tim went in jail, be like, yeah, they finally caught the dude.
And I apologize for interrupting, Lauren. I know I'm going to let you make your point. I do have to tell you a funny story. There was an exec I knew who got fired from a company, and I'm being very, very anonymous about all of this, who quit the company, but he was shoved, not jumped, because there were some investigations about, you know, illegalities and, you know, improper conduct and things like that with regard to contracts and things like that. And, you know, I do remember at the time somebody told me, my first reaction was, really? And then I was like, nah, that kind of makes sense. Anyway, you were saying, Lauren.
No, but it is true. We go in with the preconception based on our current perspective or relationship with whatever the conversation is about, whether it's a brand or a loyalty. I'm negative to brands these days. So when I see articles like this, it's only reaffirmational for me. You know, oh, wow, there it is. That's a nail in the coffin I've been talking about. It might be, you know, going back to the old conversation about being older, I've learned to wait and be patient. I'm turning into that old dude that drives down the road that isn't trying to beat you to the next light or cut you off because you're beating me on the other lane. So I got to speed up to get ahead of you, which has no common sense in the world, but you used to be that person. And now it's like, go ahead, cut in front of me. We're good. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Get in front of me in line. No, I'm not jumping over to the empty lane to the left because there's a car in front of me at the light, because it doesn't make a damn bit of difference to me whether that 1 second, not even a whole second difference of how fast I leave the next light. I'm turning into that dude. And I kind of like get mad at myself sometimes where I catch myself like trying to speed up because the person next to me is speeding. I'm like, what the fuck am I speeding up for? I have no place to go that fast.
You've been living in Florida too long.
Absolutely. And you know what? I stopped
so
using
much slower in
damn it,
Florida.
you don't need them. Or you know what? I leave it on. I don't want you to know what I'm doing next.
You leave your directional on. Yeah, that is a Florida thing.
And then I'll turn the other way.
And Lauren will drive a 300-mile journey solely in the fast lane.
Oh to hell yeah! With the left turn blinker on,
going
you don't know
5
really
miles an hour under the speed limit.
I'm that dude.
You are that dude.
Yeah, I'm that dude.
I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and it did occur to me. And I'm from New Jersey, where we drive like maniacs and everything. And it occurred to me while I was down there that, of course, Florida drivers drive the way they do. It's nothing but tourists, retirees, and meth heads. I'm going to get so much hate mail for that one. It's a joke, folks. It's a joke.
Wait. No. We need to pick this apart because you're moving here, which means you weren't a tourist. And you work, which means you're not a retiree.
This is why you can't do comedy with Ed.
So which one are you there, Tim? You leave us with one choice.
So you're bringing down some of the family business, are you?
You have an awful lot of teeth in that smile.
I had a guy who used to work for me before I was in the hospitality industry. I worked in financial services for a very brief period. My introduction to the digital world. I worked for Charles Schwab during the .com boom. And there was a guy who worked for me who wanted to be promoted, never got promoted, and the like. And it was because he pissed off a lot of people around the place for various reasons. And one of the things was he was, and I loved the guy. He was a great guy, really good worker and stuff. But he liked to buck the system a lot. And he would come in almost every day wearing like Hawaiian print shirts and things like that. And I was a young manager at the time. I hadn't had a large team. Well, wait for this. You're going to love it. I hadn't had a team for a long time and things like that. So I'm mouthing the platitudes at him that you're taught to tell people. And I said, well, the thing is, you shouldn't dress for the job you want. You shouldn't dress for the job you have. You should dress for the job you want. And he looked at me like I was a moron and said, what makes you think I'm not? I was like, that's a really good point. I can't really argue that one.
Yeah.
So I may not be a retiree, Ed.
Yeah.
Dress for the job you want.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're all trying to tend to anyway. But no, I guess to what you're saying truly, Ed, in the first part was it's best when you talk to people for no reason other than just wanting to get them to build a relationship with you. That you're not trying to pitch them, sell them, push them, drive them. Just hey, we really want to expand our understanding and communication with you. We're not trying to we're not trying to get something out of you. We're just really taking advantage of the fact that you've given us additional information in which we have this venue of communication.
How about also I'm just trying to entertain you. Well, I anytime I'm invited to do tips or tricks or anything like that, I use this one example of a very common email a lot of our partners will send, which is just an email featuring the really cool experiences people have had in the last month. And I always present it, but I always talk about you can still have a booking link, but I encourage you to put it at the footer and watch what happens.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, everyone who takes me up on it, I'll end up getting here's the email we put together. And here's the performance of that email. We didn't have a single sale in there. We didn't have a single anything. And we only had one link that led to our booking path. And it was at the bottom of the email. And we still did more revenue than our normal, sale email. And I was like, yes, because you surprised your database with, just check out some cool stuff. Here's some cool stuff. Have a moment of dreaming on us, right? And oh, by the way, when you get to the bottom, why don't you think about booking? Because you just got inspired. And I've had that small independent hotels. I just had a brand do it across their brand database. And they sent me, they measure at 3 days, 6 days, and then they do one at like 15 days just to kind of go back. The 3-day, it was double their normal email in revenue, and it didn't have a single sale in it. It was just, check out these amazing, I think they did like our pet-friendly hotels, our family-friendly hotels, and it was just memories of guests that had recently traveled there. So what I'm saying is like, okay, so you don't need, so Stephanie, you're asking how did they measure success? It was actually revenue produced in the time period, which is amazing if you think about this. Email did not have sales and only had a reservations link at the bottom. And it wasn't even like a strong call to action, like have your own memory, book now. It was literally like, if you want to see, upcoming availability, click here. And it outperformed their sale, summer in this, and, extended spring break and all of that stuff. It outperformed those emails. And it was a longer email than all of those emails too, because it was, in some cases, it was a 30-minute read if you got through it all. And still, that link at the very bottom was the one that was clicked the most and led to the most revenue in the same time frame that emails that were just promotional focused performed.
But think about it. I mean, it makes sense, Ed. You're engaging, right? We talked about travel being experiential. You're giving me some content and information about experiences. You're giving me that emotion. And I get down and then right? Like, so it makes a lot of sense to me versus sale. I mean, I follow a lot of hotels and get a lot of emails as part of my job. And man, sometimes I'm just like, sale is a 4-letter word. Can we come up with something else?
Could you buy me a drink first?
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I've said this for a long time. And Tammie, you're exactly right. It's this thing about,
I got to run, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, man. Right behind you.
We want to build a relationship with our customers, and yet we treat every interaction like it's Tinder when we should treat it like it's a Hallmark movie. It's remarkable how often we do that. I've told this story more than once on the show, so I apologize for those who've heard it before. But, I did work with a client early on, and we were talking about their email marketing program, and we said, we hate email. I said, you hate email? Why do you hate email? And they said, it has by far the lowest ADR of any of our marketing channels. And I said, really? So we went through and we looked at all of the different emails, and every email was 30% off, 40% off, 35% off, 28% off. And I'm like, I think I have a suspicion of what's going wrong here. Call me crazy. But what if we send an email that wasn't, a swipe right? You know what I mean? Like, what if we sent an email that was experiential and talked about, more of that Hallmark movie relationship? We're trying to get you to love us. Maybe we should take you out on a date first.
And look at what some of the OTAs do. And we'll take TripAdvisor as an example. Backtrack about 10 years ago, TripAdvisor, well, they still do this, but in a different degree, but they were notorious for sending out these emails of, you'd have the 10 best hotels in the United States, but then they also had the 10 worst hotels in the United States. And you know what got the most click? The 10 worst. People want to say, well, who the hell
is it?
But then they had to stop doing that because naturally those hotels complained, and it was it was negative advertising. But it was all about inspiring that curiosity, getting that click of the, hey, you curious about this? Dink. And you get there, and you get a click. With that, by the way, I am also out of time. I have to go. So hopefully see everybody next week. Happy to be saying I'm on my way to Puerto Vallarta, actually, to go down there.
Hey, you're doing your Puerto Vallarta trip. All right.
Vaya con Dios, mi amigo.
Thank you.
Hey, are we going to see obnoxiously fun pictures of you on Facebook enjoying yourself well past the spectrum of safety? I mean,
No.
You'll see them on Instagram.
Pictures. I'm just saying they won't be on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you got to do the envy pictures. Like, look at me having fun. Are you having this much fun? No. Oh, too bad.
Right.
It's like what Tammie said when she was at Disney World. Look at me. It's not you. It's me. You were having way too much fun. Dean, thank you. And yes, hopefully we'll catch you next week and all that kind of cool stuff. And thank you and all that kind of stuff. Cool.
Good. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Dean. I do want to just hit what Bruce had asked, just because I didn't realize he was asking a question at the time for it. He was asking about something about Butte, Montana, asking what looks like a very exorbitant price at $600 for walk-ins. And I have two things quick with it. One is that having run a hotel in the Florida Keys or several hotels in Florida Keys for a while, the perception whenever I quoted walk-in rates, which was consistently half of our daily business, it was an amazing market to have that kind of level in. The perception was that there was a better rate somewhere else. So even though we were giving them a realistic market-based balanced rate, their initial impression was we were trying to fleece them by walking in our door rather than having made a reservation, only for them to come back up the road because they found out that we were really just offering a rate that was really a rate. And they were just in either sticker shock mode or thinking they were trying to bargain themselves into a better position. The other is, and this I think is what is indicative to the question he's asking about this rate, I am noticing that the evil, ugly head of everything has to be shoved through the grinder of ROI for decision-making is back into the mainstream again, where if it ain't margined out to the extreme level of ability to claim it, then it's not worth doing. There is no, it's full tilt on or not, and that's it. And that's my perception of what you're saying about this with the walk-in rate, that if they think they can get it, that's why they're asking for it. And if they're holding to that rate because they think that they're going to continue to get it and the person behind them is going to be, somebody behind them is going to be willing to pay for it, then they're going to hold their ground rather than thinking it's a start rate. So I don't know. That's my perception of it, that this is an ROI filter problem of people's perception of this. That's my perspective of that. What do you guys think?
I have a very simple question. I don't have an answer. I have a question. Do you expect them to ever stay with you again?
Hey. Yeah.
I mean, if not, if it legitimately not, go ahead. I mean that seriously. I mean that seriously.
Yeah.
You know, if they're only ever going to stay with you one time ever, do what you got to do. If you think you'd want them to stay a second time, maybe we might want to think about this a little different.
Yeah. Well, but I also think too, I mean, not knowing enough about that specific market and what the rates are in the market, right? If everyone, like if the rates are $600 and up a night, I'm assuming for the type of property that's probably a little absorbent. Oh my God, I'm starting to sound like Lauren.
I love the wording. And you know what? You just keep on using little Lauren words. It's all good. I'm happy with this.
But Tim, I think to your point, right? If I'm just trying to max revenue and I don't care, and they're never going to come back, this is a once in a lifetime destination, and they come and they never come back. But if you're hoping to engage, then maybe bring it down a level. Now, if the advanced purchase reservation was $200 a night, and they're up to say, but if your advanced purchase was $500 and they're at $600, well, yeah.
That's what Bruce is pointing out. He was paying $120. But you know what, Bruce? You're pointing out what happens on airlines. If everybody on the plane asked what everybody else was paying, there'd be a few really irritated people.
Yeah.
Well, but where Bruce is right, and I agree completely. So actually, Bruce, I'm going to answer your question about doesn't it hurt the brand first, because I actually know a lot about this based on my experience with Wyndham, and we had 8,000 hotels when I was there. Weirdly enough, in very, very large chains, one bad experience at one hotel does not hurt the brand. It's there has to be a pattern. People are savvy enough consumers to realize, no, this is just some local hotel being a jackass. Now it happens twice, it happens 3 times. Now there's a pattern, and that does hurt the brand, right? So I recognize your question is probably broader than I'm answering it, because obviously if one franchisee is doing this, if one hotel is doing this, he's probably not the only one, and that can be a problem. But if it literally is one guy going rogue, believe it or not, that doesn't tend to hurt the brand with most consumers most of the time, generally speaking.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to take a slightly different approach to this based on some experience I had last month. So, I know, Bruce, you said you were paying $120, but how far in advance did you book that reservation, right? So I did my California road trip end of June, beginning of July, and I booked dates at a hotel down near Disney. And when I booked, I mean, my rate was like, it was in the 120, 130s because I booked way in advance. as we got closer, I needed to add one date, and the rate they quoted me was more than double, because by that point they wanted to change the rate for the whole set of dates. And I'm savvy enough to go, hell no. So we booked one night at a different property, which actually, and long story, but that property ended up not being open and we got moved to it anyway. So, but
you got walked back to the original property.
Yeah, really. I know that would have been funny.
That would have been funny. That would have been really funny. Yeah.
But we ended up at a slightly different hotel, and actually all part of the same brand. So this was, some brand. And we got there at the first hotel, which was supposed to be one night. And we'd already been on a trip for a few days, and I love my family, but oh my God, do I need space? And so we sat there. The other hotel had a 24-hour cancellation. And I actually canceled, even though it was a heck of a lot cheaper, canceled that room because I was like, the space, even though we were a little bit farther away, the space was what my family needed. So if you book, depending upon when you book, like rates change wildly, right? When I booked, nobody was coming. Disney wasn't even open yet. I kind of took a guess and got lucky. And then Disney opened and announced. And so, things happen. That was just my own personal take. But I don't look at, I'm paying $120 and they're paying $100. For me, that's like, well, how the heck am I so stupid? And what can I do to get the better rate next time?
Well, we've seen commercials created on that very premise. Bob bought it for this much, but he bought it on the smart website over here, and he paid less. And Bob's just dumb shit.
But Tammie, what you just described is actually very much in line with another part of the same research that we did that has proven true throughout my career. And it gets to the heart of Bruce's question. People pay for value. People do not pay a price. And how the customer defines value varies widely based on the nature of the trip, based on the destination, based on what's important to them for that trip. You needed space for your family on that specific trip, and you were willing to pay more to get it because that was part of what defined the value. We refer to it. I'm going to see if I can find a link to a blog post. It's an old one, but it needs some updating. But we refer to it as the P's and Q's, where it is price, proximity, qualities, which is just a fancy way of saying amenities, but wanted to make it a Q, and quality, right? So that tends to be the attributes that guests look at when they're making a decision about, is this a fair price or not? Am I getting good value for what I'm spending for this specific stay? And literally, when I travel as a solo business traveler, I define it one way. And when I traveled with my wife and kids, when my kids were, still living at home, I defined it a different way. And it's the same human being, right? It's not this person is always price conscious. It's this person is price conscious in some context, but in a different context can bring a whole different set of P's and Q's to it. So that's really what defines how customers define value.
Steph, we'll get to your other question, your question in just a second, but I want to add a little bit something more to this conversation. It opens the door of the dialogue of how this was handled too.
Sure.
It's easy to say now with Star Wars being what it is, that this mentality of absolute following the rules. Oh, we can ask this price and so forth. The front desk agents or the front desk team or the GM or whatever, there's no sensitivity. Something you brought up earlier, Tim, of what is the reason for their travel? Is this a one-time only guest? Like, you don't care that they come back. And so you can do this to them. Like, hey, it's $600. You walked in my door. Okay. And I don't know who you are and how long whether you're going to come back. But Tammie, giving your example, if there was an intelligent dialogue about this, like the person came back and the rule is, hey, this is the rate we're asking for this date. But they were smart enough to go over and say, yeah, but they're here 5 days before this. They're asking for a 6th. What can we do? Or, you know what? They're coming here for what? Oh, you know what? They got the whole family. They're going to this. They're probably going to want to come back next year if we really do a good job, and they're going to want to stay with us again. Yeah. So rather than thinking how we're going to stretch this 1 day rate, take it or leave it mentality, maybe we should rethink of saying, well, look, sorry, we can't give you your rate, but we can do this. Or not say, oh, the rule is if you break your reservation, it's got to be the new rate for everything. So you're looking at going, to hell no. You know, give me something that's viable. Like, I don't want to lug all, nobody wants to lug all their junk out of the room they've been into for 5 days just to go to another hotel because they can't get the right price. So all that logic and common sense goes into a dialogue that says, hey, look, we can't give you a rate, but we can do this. And now it's you. And, you know, like, look, I had a great time at the hotel, but we couldn't, I just didn't want to spend that much for the last day. So, you know, no fault to them. I understand that you're busy and I should have added the extra day or whatever. But the way they handled it is more like, you know what, for all the goodness that you provided for the 5 days, I know what your priority is, which is, hey, we can call the rate we want, and this is what we did, and you're going to look around again. You might go back to the same hotel, but likely it is you're going to look at them equally an opportunity to go back to that market again, and that's just that process. Go ahead.
We ran into that a lot. You know, Super 8 was one of the brands I had back in the day, and with no disrespect to Super 8, I actually love the brand. I think it's a great brand, but most people who stay in a Super 8 aren't going where they're going to stay in the Super 8. They're going there for some other reason, and the Super 8 happens to be, you know, proximate, happens to be convenient, happens to be a good value for what they need. And, you know, we used to have this discussion about what defined a loyal traveler in our loyalty program, right? And we recognized that there was a whole set of customers who they might stay with Super 8 one time a year. You know, they're taking their kids to Disney, or they're taking their kids to Colonial Williamsburg or someplace like that. And we had 100% of their share of wallet from a travel perspective. They took one trip a year, and they stayed at the Super 8 every single year. They were an incredibly loyal traveler. We only saw them, you know, 4 nights once a year, but we saw them every year for 4 nights, and they spent literally 100% of their travel budget at the Super 8. That's a fantastic guest, right? So you have to think about, what is our guest? Who is our customer? What is the right thing to do in those circumstances? By the way, I'm going to have to drop in just a moment.
No worries. I actually was looking at the fact that we probably should start this whole shortening of the time frames up to the top of the hour anyway. But I do want to not ignore Stephanie's request and love your opinion about this. What is considered to be a good retention number for a destination independent hotel? Sounds like a very specific question, but I mean, before I go into generalities, Tim, do you have any angle on that?
I mean, this is so market dependent. It is very hard to give an answer to this. You know, if you are a resort, it's going to be lower because people don't tend to go to the same resort year after year. If you're city center, it can be a lot higher. And I realize we don't think of city centers as destinations, but there are, you know, city centers that people love to go to because they like theater or they like sports or whatever it happens to be. It's all over the map, Stephanie. I wish I could give you a better answer than it depends. I would encourage you instead to say, what's your baseline? What are you doing to improve that number? And are you seeing it go up over time, rather than what's the average and are we average, right? That would be my quick advice on that.
So, saying from the very person that has a client that has an amazing loyalty relationship, return guest profile. I mean, you still are my benchmark when I compare. When I have hotels that say we have a 40 or 45% return audience to our hotel, and I'm looking at going, yeah, but Tim has like 80. It's like, okay.
But it varies so widely.
Yeah.
I have ones that it's really high. I have ones where it's really low, but it's really good business for them. So, you know.
And then the other thing is, as we talk about with corporate traveler, it's a different mix right now. Your loyalty percentage is going to be much different, because if your corporate traveler was even any contribution or percentage to you, and that absence of it or diminished number of it, it's going to skew your other numbers anyway. Yeah. You know, that they're not going to be there. But Tammie, I'm sorry, I jumped over what you were saying.
No, I was just going to add, pretty much y'all said all the right things. I mean, I think it depends wildly. I know, Stephanie, I think your properties are in San Diego, right? So might be a different mix than someone that comes back to New York every year, or goes to, gone are the days of like the 50s where you went to the Dirty Dancing resort every summer, right? For a week or two.
That was just something I shared with you. You didn't have to bring that up as an example. Nobody puts one in the corner.
So, but I think Tim's point was absolutely the way I'd approach it too, is where are we at? And what does that look like for the last 2 or 3 years, right? Because obviously post pandemic, you might see some different things, but what does that look like? And then how do we continue to improve that number? And then also, I mean, I guess the question is, and I know this is going to sound really silly coming from a marketer, do you want to improve that number? Are you now? Probably, but you might be better off. You know, what is the cost to acquire a new customer? What is the cost to retain that customer? And what kind of rate structures are you able to get from those? You may be better off trying to attract newer business and not focusing as much of that. Although I would say that's the exception versus the rule, but it's definitely something worth looking at when you're making these targeted marketing decisions, especially right now.
Yeah, you have to ask the question, Tammie. You are on to something so very, very smart there. I agree with 1,000,000%. No, it's
my one time a year.
No. It's right. This is you know, it is the exception, not the rule, but it's something you got to look at closely, because sometimes the easiest way to raise your rates is fire your old guests. And you got to go at it very carefully, and you got to do it very smart. And, you know, there's a way to do it, but sometimes the best way to raise your rate is bring in new blood. That takes some doing. It's not something to approach lightly of, you know, I was listening to some show and somebody said the way you raise your rates is stop all the people who come from coming. I am not saying that. Right? It is how do we think about strategically going after some higher rated guests, and that may mean displacing some long-standing lower rated guests. That can be a valid approach in the right cases. So it's a great point, Tammie.
I know you're pressed on time. I just want to add one other from a restaurant perspective of this. I had to go through the experience of taking over a restaurant that had a very strong early bird audience.
Yeah.
And it was degrading their margins, where they were really down a pit that they couldn't get out of, because it's actually literally a modicum of, you know, the best way to irritate people is take away the specials. And that's very true, but that's where it comes from early birds. You cut off the early bird special, you've created the scenario that's a $5 meal, but now you want to charge me 10. And when I used to pay 5, the value perspective, to your point, value versus price, isn't there. And so, you know, by doing, and we had to literally stop the early, which we knew if we're going to do that, we had to find reasons for other people to come into our product. And to your point, firing your old loyalty programs is just that. You know, do you need to expand it? You can determine your loyalty programs based on frequency of use and so forth, but still expand to new markets. You can cater to that loyalty relationship, but not think that it has to carry as much water. So,
and I would be criminal if I didn't say make sure you can get the new folks before.
Yeah, don't shoot the one horse before you saddle up the new one. Okay,
right? Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, you know, this is a great opportunity to just kind of wrap it all up for the day. Unless Tammie, I mean, I know that Tim has to go, but I would always love conversations. But Tim, for people to know where they can find you, since you are the font of quotes and words of wisdom, where can they find you?
Oh, I don't know about that. I am at timpeter.com. I am Tim Peter on almost all the social networks except for Twitter, where I am TC Peter. But lovely to see you all. I apologize. I have to drop. I've got to run to a meeting at 1, and I've got to leave the building to do that. So
Elvis is leaving the building, or you're here until Thursday. Try the veal. Either way.
Exactly. But great seeing you all. I will see you soon.
All right, Tim. Thank you so much.
Tim.
Bye now.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Lauren, I have a hard stop in about 10 minutes myself.
You're good.
So
you're good. This works out well to our aggregation stuff. One thing I did want to catch up with you on is with the conference in September that you all are doing. Brilliant that you kept it virtual, obviously, you know, brilliant mind for that, because there was this, who knows what was going to happen. So you really, for that, what are some other things? I know what I'm working on. I know that Holly's kind of on there too. What else is going into the agenda for this stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. And so I'm going to do just a little bit of self-promotion for half a second and put a link in the chat. And so feel free to go there. You can find out more information. You can register for the conference. So Milestone does our Engage Digital Conference, and we've done it for years in person. Last year, we shifted to a virtual model. We decided this year to keep it virtual, although, you know, hopefully at some point we'll go back to in person, because I miss seeing people in person. But it kind of comes, you know, I think it was Ed making some good points earlier in the day. I know that sounds odd to some people, but yes, Ed does make good points. You know, don't cut your marketing, right? Just target it. this for us is about education, but it's about marketing and exposure, right? Don't cut these kinds of things, even though it's a lot of work. But this is a 2-day, it's a 2 half-day conference, and it's really geared towards digital marketing. So we'll have our president and founder, who is absolutely brilliant, talking about how to stay ahead and just some things on the digital breakthrough front. We've got Lauren is one of our featured speakers, as well as Holly Zoba. Many of you know Holly, brilliant hospitality sales mindset. And we also have a few clients, customers of ours speaking, talking about, what the pandemic has taught us. So we've got a panel with some leaders, how to win your local audience. I'm just kind of listing some of the things. And it's what we did is last year we did a longer virtual day, and quite honestly, it was a bit too long of a day. So this year we're breaking it into 2 half-day components. You can register for 1 day, you can register for both days. You can also register for individual sessions. And while about 85% of it has a great hospitality slant, we do have a couple sessions that are geared towards different verticals that we have customers in. So banking, automotive, I think healthcare. I focus on hospitality, so that's where my mind is. But yeah, I'm really excited. It's always one of my favorite events of the year. We've got some great, it's very educational, great topics, great speakers, and it's free. So like I said, I put the link in the notes. Feel free to, or reach out to me if you have questions or want to learn more. But, I'm biased. It's a great event. We'd love to have you there.
A well-founded biasness too. Yeah. There was a pretty cool thing I noticed that I'm going to adopt. And that was on doing the summits that they had because when you join these, it's always under the caveat knowing that you are going to be connected to people that are doing presentations that are out to display what they do. They're going to reach out to everybody that signed up saying, hey, I want to talk to you about StOnge. Do you want to you just attended this conference? Do you want to know more information about StOnge? It's a normal byproduct of webinars and seminars and summits and all this other stuff. And it sometimes can get, for high tech, I'm going to pick on them. It's abusive. It's just insane. As soon as you sign up for a high tech, prepare for the deluge. And you all have been great about not doing that, first off. But for me, what I signed up with a different webinar, they did a pretty cool thing. They said, hey, look, these are our people that are tied to us for what products that they have and services. And they asked, would you be interested in information specific about this topic? Not the product by name, but topics or people that know about these topics, like email engagement and or social media engagement. If so, do you just want general information, aka 1 visit? Do you want specific information, aka 2 things about them? Or 3, do you really want to connect with them to ask questions? And I thought that was a really smart, okay, so let me throttle what you're going to send me. I'm full-blown interested in email campaigns. So not only do I want the initial content, but I want a follow-up content, newsletter, sign up, whatever. And also, you know what? I want to talk to somebody because I got some questions. I thought it was kind of neat because then really they were true to their word. They just went over and, they gave me what I asked for. And the things I weren't interested in that were usually kitchen sink things you get in high tech, like I didn't know I need name badges, even though I don't have a company that needs name badges. But thank you for sending me and consistently sending me perpetually emails about name badges. Oh, Stephanie's side. See? Right there. Got another side.
Yeah. Voice search is fun. We should chat someday.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, we're tough. We're cool. We're good. Thank you.
We're good. Yeah.
Yeah, Tammie, thank you very much for jumping in and joining as always. And you'll hear more about our migration of picking. I hope you guys pick some shows that you can just turn into the queen of and run and do all that kind of stuff in our new formatting as we go forward with it. Drag in all your friends.
I think it'll be great. I actually, I talked with our hospitality solutions person just a week or 2 ago. We were talking about coming up with some ideas for topics that we could do that would be educational in nature to bring to the show. So we'll definitely, as Lauren gets us all scheduled, and
I'll be sending out the calendar.
What day can I commit to that I don't have to worry about going, oh crud, this came up, or oh gee, I just wanted to sleep in today. Kidding.
Fridays, yes.
Yeah.
Cool. And we're going to do some recorded ones too, just so you know. We'll have the live show perpetually, but we're also going to start infusing recorded sessions because, like, we have Dan Waxman in Hawaii, and I'm sorry, but it's hard to really ask the man to get up at 5 a.m. and be this. But we love his brilliance and would love to go over and get his insights. Holly's in Phoenix, time zones. You're over there. You have time zone issues, and so we're going to be flexible about. We'll always have the live show. That's fine, but we're also going to start dropping in. We were able to coordinate these people to have this kind of conversation, and that way we can present it as well. So I'm looking forward to that too. So, Tammie, other than the link you provided for the conference, where else can they find you?
So I'm at, Milestone Internet. You can find me on LinkedIn, Tammie Carlisle. And you can follow me on Twitter at NetGirly, but honestly, I'm not the best at Twitter. I post much more on LinkedIn and content and information there. So that's the place to find me.
It's strange to me. I've gotten kind of fun looking at hashtags, yes, which I never really used as much as I should have. And the other is groups, lists, making lists of group activity stuff. It's really helped me begin to like it because I used to do what I used to do, which was open up Twitter and whatever was there I was looking at. And it's like, there's junk on junk. And I just got bored with it. It's like, man, this is just fire hose from fire hose. But after you start creating these filters of lists and stuff, there's some pretty cool posts that people do go, wow, that's neat. That's something that's, and I begin to chase them down and look for more data and stuff like that. So it's a love-hate on Twitter. It's like I've ignored it for a long time and stuff. So
yeah, you can definitely curate your list and really cull a lot of the noise. Frankly, I think I need to do a better job at it, but I find I'm more of an aggregator than I am a content creator. I'm more of a consumer and an aggregator personally, for a myriad of reasons. But I try and curate some of the best stuff and throw it out there on LinkedIn. It's just kind of I like to post industry news and industry content and topics that I think are valuable to us fellow hospitality marketers.
Yes, I completely agree. For those wanting to follow the replays, we do this on the TV channel, which I'm about ready to do a huge update now that Apple. Oh, I got Apple to admit they did something wrong. I should put that like a plaque on the board. I was going through this huge process of getting updates on the new app version I was putting in, and they weren't allowing it to happen for something they didn't give me access to do. And after a month of going back and forth with Apple support, which by the way, they were nice people, they finally admitted it's our fault. We never gave you access to do that. So we were asking you to do something we weren't letting you do. And I'm like, hello. So they fixed that. And now now that I'm past that hurdle with it, it's like, I'm reinvesting all this updates to it and so forth. But we do the live cast of this on there live, so you can watch it on your TV. You can see Tammie in huge 16:4, 78-inch TV if you want to. Just saying, it's real. Just
have the correct aspect ratio.
But anyway, yes. So hospitalitychannel.tv, talktravel.tv. Archives and translation, archives and transcripts are at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. And of course, we still translate this in subtitles in 11 languages because we are in 39 countries, and we simulcast this on Wednesdays at 11:30 a.m. Sydney and 11 a.m. London time. So for those people that find more convenience to listen to us then. Anyways, Steph, thanks for joining us. And the thing, I said hi to Bruce, but he had to dip out. And for everyone else that got to join us and on all the other channels. And by the way, Tim, we're on Xbox, so you can have your kids watch us on Xbox or PA Station if you want. Just saying, because we do this on Twitch too.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for everyone's time today. We'll see everyone later.
Everyone.
Thanks, Melissa. Tammie. Jesus, why am I looking at Melissa's name? I did that before, I think. Anyway, bye.